Awesome. Now that we know a C chord, let's learn how to play a G7 chord. First, we put our third finger on the third fret of Big Eddie, like so. Our second finger goes on the second fret of the A string, and our first finger goes on the first fret of Little Eddie, like this. This is what it should sound like. If it sounds like this, there are two things we can do to fix it. First, we want to make sure we're pushing down hard enough at the right spot. So not over here, away from the fret. We want it right against the fret. We want it pushing down so it has a nice clear sound. The other thing we can do is make sure that our fingers are curled up so that they are only touching the string they're supposed to with the fingertip. That's what we want it to sound like. Awesome. Now that we know our G7 chord, the goal is, once more, to never forget it again. We'll use Say It, Play It from the skills video to accomplish this goal. Again, we'll do 3 rounds of 15 reps. We'll be playing and saying G7 every 4 clicks. Follow along. A reminder of the 2 tips. No matter what, make sure you strum on beat 1 with me, even if your fretting hand is not ready. Also, no matter what, make sure you say or think the chord's name each time we strum it. Once again, to start off with, we won't have our fingers leave the strings. We will just have them stop pushing down to give them a break between reps. Like so. Ready? Set 1. Here we go. G7, 2, ready, and G7. Let your fingers relax. G7. Relax. G7. Relax. G7. Relax. G7. 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 3 more. G7. G7. Last one. G7. Strong work. For this next set, let's have our fingers come off the strings a 1/4 inch or so, like that. Make sure they stay floating over the right spot so it is easy for them to find their way back. Ready for set 2? G7, set 2. Say it, play it. 1, 2, ready, and G7. 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 More than halfway. G7. 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 Let's do 2 more. G7. Last one. G7. All right, last set. This time, let's take our fretting hand off the guitar completely between strums, like so. Third set of G7. 1, 2, ready, and G7. 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 Here's number 5. G7. 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 Here's number 9, G7. 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 We got 3 more. G7. 2 more. G7. Last one. G7. That's it for this video. Again, if you feel like you don't have these concepts down yet, play through it as many times as you need. When you're ready, head over to the next video to learn how to switch between these 2 chords well.